Damien's fingers brushed her chin, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. His eyes were intense, burning with purpose. To rule beside me, you need to be more than just beautiful. You need to be fierce. Sold to a ruthless CEO to pay off her family's debts, Sienna rises as his queen, plotting revenge against those who betrayed her. But when the past collides with power, will she find victory or lose everything? But we start the video, let us know where you're watching this video, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe Story Storer, and please share your thoughts about this story in comment section. The spotlight burned on Sienna's skin, blinding her as shadowed faces watched hungrily. Gold chains mocked her captivity, wrists bound as the auctioneer's voice boomed. Starting bid, 5 million. Her heart raced. 5 million? For her? She strained against the chains, eyes locking on her stepfather's smug grin, her stepbrother laughing beside him. Betrayal twisted inside her. How could they sell her like property? 6 million, a cold voice echoed. Sienna's gaze darted, unable to see his face. Another man challenged with arrogance. 7 million. 10 million. Silence. The crowd froze, stunned. A tall figure stepped into the light, silver eyes piercing. Damien Blackwood, the ruthless CEO known as the Ice King. Power radiated from him, chilling the air. Sold! The gavel's slam sealed her fate. Sienna's knees wobbled. Sold to him. What awaited her now? Stories of his mercilessness flooded her mind. Damien approached, his eyes stripping her bare with a calculating gaze. Without warning, he drew a knife. Sienna's heart stopped, but he swiftly cut her chains. They clattered to the floor. "You belong to me now," he said, his voice cold. "But I don't need a slave." He leaned in, his breath brushing her ear. "I need a queen." Stunned, Sienna followed him as he led her out, past her stepfather's outraged face. In the limousine, Damien's promise echoed. "I bought you to destroy them." Her heart raced. Who was Damien Blackwood, and why did he choose her? The limousine glided through the city, silence hanging heavy between them. Sienna's heart raced as she stole glances at Damien Blackwood. His chiseled jaw was set, his silver eyes focused ahead, cold and calculating. Yet, she couldn't deny his magnetic presence. Why did he buy her? Why did he want to destroy her family? "You hate them," she finally whispered. "Why?" His lips curved into a wicked smile. "Hate is too kind a word." He turned to face her, his gaze intense. "They thought selling you would save them, but they have no idea what I'm capable of." A shiver ran down her spine. His voice was smooth, dangerously seductive, and it unsettled her how drawn she felt to him. The limousine stopped before iron gates that opened to reveal a sprawling estate. The mansion stood grand and cold, much like the man beside her. Damien stepped out first, extending his hand. "Don't keep me waiting, Sienna." His tone was teasing, a challenge in his eyes. She hesitated but took his hand, warmth sparking at his touch. His fingers tightened, lingering a moment longer than necessary. "See? Not so difficult," he murmured, his voice low, sending a blush to her cheeks. Inside, the mansion was magnificent. Sparkling chandeliers, endless hallways, priceless art. It was luxurious but cold, like a beautiful prison. Damien led her to an opulent room with a 4-poster bed and a balcony overlooking the gardens. "This is yours. You're free to explore the estate, but you cannot leave, not until I say so." Her chin lifted defiantly. "I'm your prisoner?" He stepped closer, his breath warm against her skin. "You're my queen. There's a difference." His eyes roamed her face, lingering on her lips. "Get used to seeing me around. I always visit my queen." Her heart raced, heat flooding her cheeks. "Why me?" she whispered. His gaze darkened. "Because your family destroyed mine." His fingers brushed her hair before he turned to leave. "Sweet dreams, Sienna." The door closed softly, his words echoing in her mind as she stood in her golden prison, her heart pounding. Sienna couldn't sleep. Damien's words haunted her. "Your family destroyed mine." But how? Her stepfather was cruel, yes, but he was nothing compared to Damien's power. How could he have harmed someone like Damien Blackwood? She stepped onto the balcony, the cold night air brushing against her skin. The sprawling gardens below were beautiful, serene, but they felt like a prison. Memories surfaced. Her mother's gentle smile, her father's warm embrace. But those happy moments were overshadowed by the man who shattered her world. Her stepfather. A man who played the role of a caring guardian after her father's death, only to seize control of the company and wealth, treating her as a burden, a debt to be sold. Her fists tightened. Once again, she was his pawn, sold to a man who hated her family just as much as she did. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. An elderly woman stood at the door, her eyes gentle. "Miss Sienna, dinner is served. Master Damien requests your presence." Master Damien, the title was fitting. He ruled this palace like a king, but she wouldn't be his servant. She held her head high as she followed the woman to the grand dining hall. Damien sat at the head of the table, his posture commanding, his gaze sharp. His eyes followed her as she approached. "Sit," he ordered, gesturing to the chair beside him. Not at the other end, but right next to him. Her heart fluttered, but she refused to show fear. She met his gaze head-on as she sat down. A faint smirk played on his lips. "You don't fear me," he noted, his voice low, almost amused. "Should I?" she challenged, her chin lifted defiantly. His eyes gleamed with intrigue. "Most do," he murmured, leaning in slightly, his presence overwhelming. "But I like your spirit." His fingers brushed hers as he reached for his glass, the touch deliberate, lingering. "It's captivating." Heat rushed to her cheeks, but she held his gaze. "Flattery doesn't suit you." His laughter was soft, almost seductive. "Who said I was flattering you?" His eyes darkened, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I always get what I want, Sienna. And right now, you intrigue me." Her breath caught, her heart pounding. But she wouldn't let him see her falter. "Then I suppose I should keep you guessing." His smirk widened, his gaze intense. "Oh, I look forward to it." And just like that, she realized. This was more than a game of revenge. It was a battle of wills. And Damien Blackwood never lost. The days that followed were relentless. Sienna was thrust into a world of power and privilege, but it came at a price. Training. Damien was unforgiving, shaping her into the perfect weapon. She learned to navigate high society, mastering charm, deception, and ruthlessness. Each dawn, she trained with experts in business strategy and etiquette. Damien demanded perfection, his piercing gaze assessing her every move. He never praised her, but the rare flicker of approval kept her pushing forward. Sienna understood his world. Power wasn't just about wealth. It was about control. She watched Damien dominate meetings, his words sharp, his presence commanding. He was a king, and she was to be his queen. One evening, exhausted but determined, she found him in his study, silhouetted against the city lights. For a moment, he looked almost vulnerable. She stepped closer. "I'm ready," she declared, her voice steady. "Ready to make him pay." Damien turned, his eyes darkening. "Are you?" He approached, his presence overwhelming. "This isn't just about revenge, it's about power, making him kneel before you." His fingers brushed her chin, tilting her face to his. The touch was cold, but his gaze burned with intensity. To rule beside me, you need to be fierce, unforgiving. Sienna's heart raced, her breath hitching. His face was close, his scent intoxicating. For a moment, she saw beyond his ruthless exterior, a man burdened by shadows. "I'll do whatever it takes," she whispered. His lips curved into a dangerous smile. "Good, then let's begin." As he turned away, his hand lingered on hers, a touch that sent shivers down her spine. Power wasn't the only thing she craved. Sienna stood at the top of the grand staircase, her silver gown shimmering under the chandeliers. Alone, just as Damien commanded, she entered the gala with one mission: infiltrate, gather information, and manipulate alliances. Failure wasn't an option. Eyes followed her, intrigued by the mysterious beauty. She moved gracefully, her smile charming, but her mind sharp and focused. She listened, catching whispers of power plays and rivalries. She was playing her role perfectly. Then she saw him, Ethan Coleman, her stepbrother, the man who convinced their father to sell her. Rage bubbled within, but she masked it with a flawless smile. Approaching him, she purred, "I couldn't help but notice you. You must be important." Ethan's ego swelled as he introduced himself, unaware of her true identity. "I'm Sierra," she lied, her voice sweet. They flirted, laughed, and he revealed his latest business scheme, a merger that would expand his empire. It was exactly what Damien needed. She played along, leaning closer, her eyes feigning admiration. Ethan, blinded by her beauty, boasted about his power, his ambitions. Sienna memorized every word. Returning to Damien, she reported everything. His cold exterior softened, his lips curving into a satisfied smile. "Well done. You played him perfectly." Her heart raced, not just from victory but from the way he looked at her, intense, dangerous. For a moment, his guard dropped, revealing pain and loneliness beneath his icy demeanor. But he stepped back, his mask returning. Rest. Tomorrow, his downfall begins. As he walked away, Sienna realized the most dangerous game had just begun, between revenge and the feelings she was beginning to harbor. Using Sienna's information, Damien dismantled Ethan's merger with ruthless precision. Investors backed out, partners turned hostile, and Ethan's reputation crumbled. It was a flawless strike. Sienna played her role perfectly, charming Ethan with innocence and sweetness. He was smitten, never suspecting her betrayal. She attended his parties and even dined at his home, the place where she once suffered. Now, she stood there in designer gowns, smiling gracefully. Richard Coleman watched her curiously, not recognizing the girl he sold to clear his debts. Sienna's blood boiled, remembering his cruelty. But she held back, knowing revenge required patience. Damien's plan unfolded seamlessly. He sabotaged Richard's investments and shattered his alliances. Sienna fed them false information, leading them into ruin. They trusted her completely, blind to her deception. Ethan fell hard, showering her with gifts and affection. It made her sick, but she continued the act, knowing it brought her closer to vengeance. Meanwhile, moments with Damien grew more intense. His cold eyes watched her every move, but his rare praise warmed her. She tried to remind herself that he was the man who bought her, the ruthless CEO who used her as a pawn. But beneath his icy facade, she saw glimpses of pain and loneliness, and despite herself, she was drawn to him. Sienna stayed focused, knowing her revenge was just beginning. But her heart was becoming her most dangerous enemy. The grand charity ball glittered with wealth and power, the perfect setting for the final strike. Hidden among the shadows, Damien watched Sienna glide through the crowd, captivating every gaze. In her crimson gown, she was a vision of elegance and danger, his queen. She approached Richard Coleman with a sweet smile. "Mr. Coleman, it's an honor. Ethan speaks so highly of you." Richard beamed with pride. "Well, he is my son, and you are?" "Sierra Blackwood. My father owns the Blackwood Hotels," she lied flawlessly, a lie crafted by Damien himself. Richard's eyes gleamed with greed. "Blackwood Hotels? Impressive. We should discuss business." Sienna leaned closer, her voice a seductive whisper. "I heard about your upcoming investment. I might be interested." Richard took the bait eagerly, boasting about his venture, the very one Damien had orchestrated to fail. Sienna played along, asking the right questions and feeding his ego. Damien watched, satisfaction swelling within him. She was perfect, cunning, manipulative, flawless. But then, Ethan approached, his eyes filled with admiration as he greeted Sienna. Jealousy flared within Damien, sharp and possessive. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to remain in the shadows. This was all part of the plan. Sienna laughed at Ethan's words, her smile dazzling. But her eyes flicked to Damien, locking with his for a brief, electrifying moment. His heart raced, emotions he couldn't afford to feel threatening to break through. But revenge came first. The Colemans would fall. The trap was set flawlessly. Richard invested everything into the fake deal, confident it would double his wealth. But within days, the market crashed. Stocks plummeted. Investors withdrew, and his company faced bankruptcy. His empire crumbled before his eyes. Ethan wasn't spared either. His accounts were frozen, his business partners turned their backs, and his reputation was left in ruins. The father and son were stripped of their power and wealth, reduced to nothing. Damien made his move swiftly. He bought out their assets at dirt-cheap prices, taking control of the Coleman name. Their legacy was his now. Overnight, they were penniless, powerless. Richard stormed into Damien's office, his face red with fury. "You did this! You set me up!" Damien leaned back in his chair, his expression cold and unbothered. "Business is war, Coleman. You were just too arrogant to see the ambush." Ethan stumbled in, pale and broken. You ruined us. Everything's gone." Damien's gaze was icy. "You destroyed yourselves. Greed made you blind. I just sped up the inevitable." Richard's fists clenched, his voice shaking. "I'll rebuild. I'll find a way to take back everything you stole." A cold laugh echoed through the room as Sienna walked in, poised and regal. Richard's eyes widened. You? You were with him all along?" Her smile was venomous. "Surprised, father? Did you really think I'd forget how you sold me to clear your debts?" Richard staggered back, his face draining of color. "No, it can't be. Sienna?" She stepped closer, her voice sharp and unforgiving. "Yes, the stepdaughter you discarded like trash. But now I stand above you, and you're nothing." Ethan's face fell, shattered. You lied to me, used me." Sienna's eyes were cold, void of mercy. "You were my enemy long before you became my pawn." Richard fell to his knees, defeated. "Please, have mercy. We're family." Sienna's laughter was hollow. "Family? You never treated me as such. You taught me to be ruthless, to survive. This is your doing." She turned to Damien, her voice steady. "It's over. They're finished." Damien's eyes softened with pride. "Yes, you've won." Together they walked out, side by side, the king and queen of an empire rebuilt from ruins. Sienna glanced back one last time at the shattered men who once controlled her life. She felt no remorse, only victory. Finally, she was free.